Bobby here for Torrents.com. In this lesson, we're going to learn the Metallica tune Nothing Else Matters, which came out in 1991 on Metallica's Black album. Okay, this is a nice, crafty little piece of fingerstyle guitar on this tune. Okay, it's primarily a clean tone tune, as you know. If you know the tune, you know that's primarily a clean tone, kind of a ballad sort of a tune. It does get into a little bit of distortion, towards the end. Let's get started with the intro. Now, again, as I mentioned earlier, this tune is primarily played fingerstyle. At least Hetfield's part is primarily fingerstyle. And this actually makes, the opening measures of this tune actually makes a good exercise for basic right-hand fingerstyle technique. What's happening here is we're going to assign the thumb to the sixth string, and we're going to assign these three fingers, index, middle, and ring, to these three strings, 3, 2, and 1, all right? So throughout a lot of this, the thumb is actually going to account for some of the bass strings, and the fingers are going to account for the treble strings, okay? And a lot of it, especially in this intro, a lot of it is index finger on the third string, middle finger on the second string, and the ring finger on the first string. So I'm going to go ahead and play the first few measures, and then we'll talk about it a little further. Here it is. So again, you can see how each of the right-hand fingers are assigned to one specific string. All right. Now, as far as the time signature for this tune is concerned, how we count it, you can count this tune a couple different ways. I tend to think of this tune as being in a time signature called 6/8. All right. 6 meaning we're counting this in groups of 6 beats per measure, and the 8 meaning that the primary note that determines the subdivision is the 8th note. Okay, the 8th note equals 1 beat. Now, again, this is largely a written music thing. 6/8. Could also be considered 12/8 if you want to count it in groups of 12, or you could even consider this to be a slow 4/4, okay? The way I tend to count it is like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So again, you can count this a couple different ways. That's the way I think of it, and that's the way we're going to deal with it in this particular lesson. All right, so far you see what's happening. The first few bars are extremely simple, nothing but open strings. But then we start to get into some fretted notes, and it starts to get, I would say at the very least an intermediate level of difficulty for this tune. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a good chunk of the intro, and then we're going to go back and break it down and just work on it in smaller portions. Okay, but for now I'm going to go ahead and play a good chunk of the intro. Okay, here we go. Okay, that's awesome guitar part, okay? And as you can see, it gets a little bit intricate, okay? The open string intro is kind of deceptive, You think it's going to be easy, and then all of a sudden it gets hard quick, okay? So anyway, we're going to take this in little chunks. Again, we have 3 measures of this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay? And then when we finally do start to come in with the fretted notes, we get into it like this. Here's the 4th measure: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, you can see I'm fretting that 7th fret of the 1st string. And now here is the 5th measure. Okay, one more time. Okay, it's a pull-off of the 7th fret of the 1st string. Okay, here's bar 6. Okay. Now, one thing about this I do it as a double pull-off. Okay. What I think he might be doing is kind of like a hammer and then a slide, okay? I'll play it like I think he might be doing it. Something like that. All right. To me, it's a little easier to execute like this. Okay, I just try to do it real quick. double pull off, and it's one of those things where it sounds pretty much the same. It may be slightly different from the way he does it. I just find it to be easier, okay? So if you really want to try to be authentic, you might want to play the measure something closer to this. Okay, with a hammer and then a quick slide, all right? Now the next measure, okay? This measure actually is only 3 beats, okay? They kind of sneak this measure in there that only has 3 beats, okay? So that measure starts with this, and then it moves down to this. Now again, the way I played it was like this, okay? Now again, to me it sounds like he might be doing a pull off and then a slide, and then the open string, all right? Okay. Now again, that's a case where I think it's easier to, all right, again, very similar in sound, okay, but technically they're slightly different, so you can choose which one of those approaches you like best, all right? I'm going to play it from measure 5 up to measure 7, okay? That 3/8, that short measure will be measure 7, okay? So here's measure 5. Measure 6. Measure 7. All right, now I'll play it the other way, which is more like the hammer and slide kind of way. Measure 5. Measure 6. Measure 7. All right, and now we come into measure 8. So far it's been very much an E minor tonality, okay, dealing with these open strings. Now the bass note changes to the 5th string, okay, so now we're going to be dealing with an A minor tonality for the next few measures, okay, next 2 measures anyway. All right, here's what we have for measure 8. All right, we start off with open strings, 5 and 1. And you can see we have these 2 fingers here fretted at the 5th fret, strings 3 and 2. A little bit of a stretch back here, a pull off on the 1st string from the 2nd fret to the open string on the 1st string. All right. And then the next measure, measure 9, which leads into measure 10, okay? So we have this again. And then all 4 fingers together, which brings us into measure 10. And now we're kind of dealing with a C major tonality. All right, so here's measures 8 and 9. Which leads us into measure 10 with this chord. Okay, a C chord, you know, using the open 1st string. And here, I'll play measure 10 in its entirety right now. Here it is. All right, first the chord, all 4 fingers, and then this arpeggio. The 1st finger comes off the bass note, comes down here for the pull-off, and then comes back up to the 5th string for its bass note. All right, so it's this. All right, now the next measure, 11, we come up here, same exact shape, just moved up a whole step, so now it's like a D tonality. Okay, but with that open E string, it kind of makes it sound like a D with an added 9th, okay? Or an added 2nd. Again, you don't have to really think of it, you don't have to call it that, you can just call it D, you know, it's like, because it's pretty much a D type of sound. Okay, so here's that complete measure. Again, here we get into some pull-offs and hammers at the end of it. So starting out, again, 5th fret, the D type sound. There's that arpeggio again. Now we come to the 1st string. Okay, a hammer and pull off of the 5th fret of the 1st string. And then we come to the 2nd string. It's a pull off from the 7th fret to the open string. And then the 2nd string again, open, and then hammering onto the 5th fret. So we have this. And you can use whatever right hand fingers you want for this. You can use the same finger or you can mix it up, it's up to you. Okay, so here's measures 10 and 11. All right, one more time. Okay, now the good news is it gets easy again. All right, for the next 4 measures, we're dealing mostly with the open strings, okay? As you can hear, those were harmonics at the 12th fret on the bottom 3 strings. Bass note, and then harmonic 3rd, harmonic 2nd, harmonic 1st, normal open 2nd, normal open 3rd. So it's that same right hand pattern that we did for the first 4 bars, just with those harmonics thrown in there, okay? So here it is. Back to 3 more measures of these open strings.